In our last segment, Kirk Leckton from Brunzell Lumber's Panelized Building System explained the design process along with some of the advantages to building in a controlled environment. Now let's see firsthand how buildings are constructed indoors with plant manager Joe Michaels. So Joe, what happens here in the manufacturing facility?
Well, Stu, as you just seen from Kirk up in the office, they do all the design work up in the office, and they generate shop drawings and layouts for the guys down here in the shop. And then Gary, our shop foreman, takes like the floor layout here, which is what he's working on. He has all the pieces laid out in here, and he gathers all the pieces ahead of time, and they get them all cut ahead of time. And then on this particular project here, they started building the first floor section that we have over at this end, and that's what we've got going down here, where they've taken the pieces, they're starting to put them together. It's sort of like putting a puzzle together. They've got the layout which shows them where to put everything. We start putting the pieces all together. They're going to glue and screw the floor deck down, which makes a much stiffer and stronger floor. A lot of people are still nailing floor decks out in the field, whereas we screw and glue every floor deck. We even deal with odd angles that we've got, like a bay window down at the one end of the floor deck here. And we work off of a 90-degree square corner off of the floor. We're working in a much safer environment here than what you have out in the field. Out in the field, on a day like today where it's raining, you'd have slippery foundation walls in which they'd be working on top of. And in the winter time, they got ice and snow to deal with. We don't have those issues to deal with here in the controlled environment that we have here in our plant.
Seems like there's a lot of advantages to working in components. It seems like you get it done much more efficiently, it's safer, you're not dealing with the elements. Do you get a better end product?
Oh, you get a much better end product. Everything is designed up front. So by the time it gets down here to the field, everything has been designed out, analyzed. We're far exceeding the code minimums for building the floors or walls, for that matter, headers and that. We always try to exceed the minimums required by the code.
Seems like you're taking the guesswork out of the field work.
Oh, very much so.
Now, let's specifically take a look at the floor deck. You mentioned it's screwed and glued. Why is that so important?
Well, gluing it, first of all, really holds it together and forms what in an engineering term would be like a T-beam, which makes the floor much stiffer. And then using screws over nails, nails have a tendency at times to work their way out, especially when you walk across the floor and it moves up and down a little bit, it'll work those nails out. A screw, it won't work the screws out.
So the homeowner doesn't have to worry about having a squeaky floor. It really, truly is a silent floor.
That is correct. With the glue and the screws, you're going to have a lot less problems with any type of squeak.
I also noticed that you're using the silent floor system. Is that advantageous versus a 2x10 or 2x12?
Well, yeah, the engineered wood products is what these are called, and specifically a wood eye joist is much more environmentally friendly. It uses much less wood, and we end up with a lot less scrap when we panelize here in the plant. We have very little that goes into a dumpster.
Yeah, and that's another advantage to the panelized process. It's almost a green type of building.
Right.
Okay, takes care of the floor system. What about the walls down here?
Well, the walls, we start over here where all the pieces get cut. We got sheets that come down that tell them how to cut everything. The pieces come over and they start putting things together over in this area. And then we come over to what we call our jig table, which has jigs at 16 inches on center and 24 inches on center, in which we've got nail guns at the end, and they can nail it off with ring shank nails to get everything put in place quickly.
Boy, a couple things I noticed. First off, everything is so precise. Everything is true. It looks like great components. This has to make everybody happy down the line, especially a drywaller.
Oh yeah, with nice straight pieces of lumber that we use, and we buy a better grade of lumber, better quality lumber, so that it is straighter, truer, less warp, less problems in the field. If you notice in here, Stu, we've got a 4-ply column here, which we've actually done the design work on and engineered out and calculated out that we need that many plies in order to hold the load that's coming from above.
That's an excellent example of how do you do that out in the field. You're, again, trying to take the guesswork out of the field work.
Right, we do all the design work here up in the office. It all starts with the technology of computers.
Okay, well, kind of take us down the line here of a wall building process.
Well, moving on down the line, down at the next stage, we add either sheeting in the form of either OSB, plywood, or styrofoam, whatever the customer wants, or a combination of the two. We use a router to route out the window openings or door openings, and we got a nailer that'll nail off the exact spacing that's required for the sheathing. And beyond that, we put on the house wrap or Tyvek, whatever we have there, and then it goes on a pile, gets loaded on the trucks to go out to the site.
Well, that takes care of the walls. Let's go over here and see how the trusses are manufactured.
All right. Stu, here's where we start cutting members for the trusses. We have a linear saw here, and that'll cut multiple members out of one board. It's very efficiently gone in and figured out which pieces to put out of what board to get the least amount of waste.
Another good example of it's a green building process. You're maximizing the lumber that's going into the project.
Very much so. We have very little waste, and the little waste we do have, we chip up and use for horse bedding.
Okay, now this is just cutting 90s right now. Can it cut multiple angles?
It can cut as many angles as we need on each end of the board, and some boards will have like 3 angles cut on each end of the board, and when you put them into the truss, it forms nice joints in the trusses. And Stu, as we've seen on the linear saw, here we've got members where we got angles cut on both ends. Here they start putting the pieces to the puzzle together. The way we do it is we've got little white pucks around the outside that form the outside geometry of the truss. Then they take these metal connector plates, which have little teeth sticking out the bottom of them, and they tack them in place to hold the members together until this gantry down at the end will come over the top, press the plates in most of the way, but not quite all of the way. Then we've got lift outs in the table that'll lift the truss up, send it to the side, and they go down the rollers out what we call the finish roller, which finishes pressing the plates in. And outside we got a stacker which stacks the trusses on top of a pile, in which they get banded, then loaded on trucks and sent out to the sites.
Well, you know, Joe, it's been fascinating walking through from the floors to the walls to the trusses. It is like one big puzzle being built in a controlled environment, taking all the guesswork out of the stick building process.
Very much so. We've got everything figured out ahead of time up in the office. That's where it all begins.
Well, I appreciate you coming on today's show and giving us a quick overview to the manufacturing process of a panelized home.
Thanks, Stu. It's been my pleasure.
Stay tuned. We'll see the setting process, along with some residential and commercial panelized buildings next.
For years, builders have turned to Brunzell lumber for quality building components. With a tradition of trust and service beyond expectations, our knowledgeable staff can provide a complete component system, from engineered roof trusses to framed wall panels to designed floor systems. Brunzell Lumber can partner with you and your builder to help you through the new home construction process. The Brunzell Building System, a great way to build.
So far in today's show, we've learned that virtually any design can be built using the panelized building system. And we've seen the advantages to building in a controlled environment. But does the panelized process really make for a more efficient install on site? It sure does, as most panelized homes can be set in a day or two, which means the interior components are less likely to be exposed to or damaged by inclement weather. Now, the setting process is really quite simple in theory. As the pre-engineered components arrive on site, a crane is used to set each numbered piece in its proper place according to the master plan. The setting process usually begins with the floor system. As these sections are carefully lifted off the truck and placed onto the foundation, the setting crew fastens them into place. Once the floor system is installed, it's time for the exterior wall panels to be set. These are also numbered, so the setting process goes remarkably quick. With the exterior walls in place, numbered bunks of interior walls are gently set inside and efficiently erected by the crew. Upon completion of setting all of the walls, it's time for the final component, the roof trusses. And as with the other components, each numbered truss is swung into place by the crane, securely fastened, and ready to be sheathed. And that's basically it. The setting process is complete, and the house is ready for its roofing, windows, and doors. I hope this gives you a better appreciation of the time savings the panelized process provides during the framing stage of construction. Remember, by getting the structure under cover in a timely fashion, we can better protect the interior components from adverse weather. Now let's finish up today's show with our component specialist, Greg Burt, who shows us some residential and commercial panelized buildings within our community.
Well, Stuart, here we are at a house that was panelized for Tom Zimmer Builders.
Is this the one that we saw back at the plant that, as I understood, it only took about 5 days to set?
Yes, that's correct. As a matter of fact, even constructed it was a little bit less than that, and we were able to get the house under cover within 5 days.
So in your opinion, is that the big advantage to panelized construction? I mean, we've seen the process up to the setting point, and it seems to be getting it under cover is the name of the game.
Yes, Stu, that is one of the advantages. In conjunction with I-Level by Weyerhaeuser, we're able to engineer this house from walls to floors to roof systems so that we can close in that envelope faster, avoiding weather concerns. For instance, it's been a very wet spring, so we're able to reduce the amount of water that comes into the house, which also has a benefit for the owner because we can mitigate mold issues.
Sure, and as we saw back at the plant, and I imagine it's the same out on site, there's a reduced environmental impact as well. There's less waste out here.
Absolutely. We're able to use components or small pieces of lumber that are waste lumber within it, and then that which is not able to use, we can grind up and use for horse bedding.
Well, the benefits are obvious when it comes to new construction. What about the remodeling process? Is it caught on there as well?
Yes, it has, Stu. We've seen for additions and also, more importantly, second floor additions, where the panelized product can, again, shorten that envelope, which is even more crucial in a house that has existing furnishings in it.
Sure, that's got to be great peace of mind for the builder and for the homeowner. There would be less disruption. Instead of taking 6, 10, 12 weeks to do, it might take half that amount with a panelized process.
Absolutely, Stuart.
Okay, what about commercial applications? Do you ever see panelized construction being used there?
I'm glad you mentioned that. I have an excellent project to show you just down the road. Stuart, here we are at the Bergamot Clubhouse and Golf Course in Oregon, built by Ideal Builders. And as you can see in between some of the columns, there are some radius wall panel sections that are a little more custom than you would see in a traditional setting.
Sure, when I take a look at archway window, I think of custom home building or custom commercial buildings. Did that make it more challenging for you?
It is more challenging, but the nice thing about panels is we can take in those plans from the architect or the designer and meet those needs with a panelized system that we can help engineer and design.
Well, the building's certainly coming along nicely. Did you find it was a quicker setting process, at least the exterior envelope with the panelized system?
Yes, it is quicker, and that's very important for a commercial builder because they always have a time constraint that's involved with it. And with the Brunzell panelized building system, we can supply larger panels, and also we can bring those in on trailers and have those on site crane ready so that the production is kept in pace, and also again closing in that envelope so the subcontractors can come in and work on it.
Boy, it really sounds like a win-win-win situation for everybody involved. After all, time is money, and this panelized process, at least on site, seems to speed up the process or at least keep it on schedule.
It certainly does.
What about the engineered components themselves? I gotta believe that in an application of this size, those really come into play.
I'm glad you asked that. In this particular project, we had some very tall walls. And in using engineered studs supplied by I-Level by Weyerhaeuser, we were able to keep those walls straight and true, which is very important for the drywall and finishing aspect of the project.
Well, that makes sense, and it's nice with your system that everything's in-house. So with all the engineering to the building to the setting process, you're really taking the guesswork out of the field work.
Making it easier for the contractor to build the project.
Okay, what about other commercial applications? Is it becoming more popular? Are you finding developers actually turning to the panelized system?
We do find that the panelized system is becoming more prevalent in commercial construction for hotels, clinics, condominiums, many different facets of the construction process.
Well, it's been great having you on today's show. I wish we had more time to talk about the panelized process. I do appreciate you coming on and talking about some of the virtues.
A pleasure.
Now here are some key points to help summarize today's show. If you're building new or remodeling an existing home, consider panelized construction. With today's modern technology, virtually any design can be engineered and constructed using state-of-the-art components. In addition, building indoors creates a safer work environment, has a lower environmental impact, and can get your project under cover much quicker than traditional methods, which will help keep the elements outside where they belong. And don't forget about commercial applications. The panelized building system is a great option to keep the job flowing smoothly and completed on schedule, which means happier subs and more satisfied owners. Well, we're all out of time for this week's show. Hope you've enjoyed it. We'll see you again next time on today's Home Remodeler.